I'm Sandy Robb. I work for the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. Our Beyond the Panda programme is our giant panda education programme. It provides a cross-curricular learning, not just about giant pandas, but about China, its culture and its language. Right, we're going to start playing the game. And as any board game, you will start on the start square. And Sean is going to start for us.
Oh. 1, 2. Wow, keeps going. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, he has landed on a square that does say collect a white counter, but what that means in the rules of the game is that if you had entered the stellar sea eagle and come out, on coming out, you get to collect a white counter because you've done the task, you've gone through a pathway. So really that square means nothing if you haven't passed the pathway.
R. P. R.
Oh, now that's exciting.
So
Roll it again, roll the dice again.
E. One of the giant panda threat challenges.
Yes. So the first roll of the dice there landed on the enter the giant panda pathway. And because we're in the giant panda, we would take the giant panda set of cards, and you're on a threat, so you would take the first of the threat cards. And want to read out the card?
生境丧失 is the Mandarin translation for this threat. Discuss what the picture represents and name the threat.
What we've given there is a picture of somebody chopping down the bamboo forests. So even if they don't know what the Mandarin word for that threat is, they've got the picture to try and recognise what they think it is. So in that English, that threat would be habitat loss. Chopping down the trees and habitat loss. And you would then get a red counter for being able to recognise that as habitat loss.
Deforestation. No. Is that the same?
It'd be the same.
It'd be the same.
Would you like to roll? The language challenge for the giant panda. So again, you would take the giant panda set of cards and we turn to the one that says, language on it. And do you want to maybe just read out what the language card says?
大 means big. Name another common adjective in Mandarin. For example, small, long, short, thin, fat, and so on. Try to name a different one each time someone takes the challenge.
So name us one of those adjectives in Mandarin.
Cute.
Cute. That's great when you've thought up your own one, which is great. So what does cute in Mandarin?
可爱.
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 But then the next person that lands on that same giant panda language square cannot say cute again. They're going to have to think of another one. And it might get harder and harder as the game goes on because all the adjectives that they knew and they'd stored up to say, they're going to have to think of more. Yeah. And we have, this time, the Baral set of cards. And you've printed on a threat. So you're going to go to the first threat card in there. And if you could read that threat card for us.
气候变化 is the Mandarin translation for this threat. Discuss what the picture represents and name the threat.
This one's quite interesting because there's two pictures. And they've got the Baral currently living today about halfway up the mountain. And then they're showing in the future that Baral is very near the top of the mountain. And it says, well, as the temperature rises, those animals that normally needed to live partway up the mountain or at that temperature will actually have to move up to get to the cooler temperatures. And what happens if the temperature goes on far too much, that we will run out of mountain, and where are the baral going to go? There's going to be no habitat. And so what do we call that in English? Our type of threat would be?
Climate change.
Yep, climate change. That's great. It's your turn. Thank you. You roll the dice.
Wow.
Oh, so we've got a new animal here. We've got the Amur tiger, and we've got a language card to do with the Amur tiger. So that one is there. And would you like to read the language challenge?
东北 means northeast. Name other directions in Mandarin. Try to name a different one each time someone takes the challenge.
So what direction are you going to name?
东南 southeast.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously there's at least 8, and that's you got the. Did you get your red counter for challenge? I don't know. Somebody missed the red counter, and it's
2.
this one was already taken for the giant panda, so we move to the second threat card. And would you like to read that one out?
Discuss what the picture represents and name the threat.
So in this one, we've actually established already what we think the main threat to giant pandas is from that first time round, and we had the Mandarin translation of it. What was the main threat to giant pandas?
生境丧失.
Which is habitat loss. It's showing the same thing here, but it's showing a different reason for habitat loss.
It's like urbanization, like human beings taking the habitat from the animal to build the city. Yeah.
That's exactly right, yeah. So we've got trucks that are building roads or building cities or building towns. The first one was showing the habitat forest chopping down for supply of wood or for clearing that land, but we've also got different types of habitat loss. So it's just strengthening the fact that giant pandas' main threat is habitat loss. Okay.
4 1 2 3 4
Wow.
Yes. You have come out. We've done a complete pathway here of the giant pandas. So because we've come out with that pathway, you definitely get a white conservation counter. Right, who's next?
2
That's a fact card, which we haven't discovered what the fact cards are about now. So similarly for each animal, this is a more science-related fact to the animal. So what we're going to do here is, you could read the fact card for the Amur tiger.
Name a species of big cat. Try to name a different one each time someone takes the challenge.
So you could do this, depending on the level of your students, where they just name it purely in English. This is a fact challenge, so it's not to do with the Mandarin language. So if they can name any big cat and they don't know the Mandarin of the big cat, that doesn't matter. But in your follow-on materials, you will get examples of the big cat and the Mandarin translation. So depending again the level of your students, whether you want to introduce them to other animals and how to write them. So I've now given you the English clues, haven't you, here? What big cat are you going to go for?
I will say 美洲狮, the last one.
Oh, Major Show, the cougar. The cougar.
2
That's great. So we've landed on the language challenge for the Baral. So that one, turn to the language cards, and could you read out the Baral?
山 mountain forms part of the character. 岩 meaning cliff. Name other characters with shan in them. Try to name a different one each time someone takes the challenge.
So this one is slightly different take on the rest of them. This is looking for this radical character, shan, meaning mountain, and thinking of any words where that would be part of. Some of those would be things like, I think, island, cliff itself, island, years old, which doesn't really have anything to do with that. So there's other examples there. So which one are you going for? What are you going to name?
Sui.
Which is certainly one the children would learn. That's great. So we're at the third threat card for the giant panda. And as you know, remember from the last two threats, we introduced the Mandarin name for this threat. Then we thought about different aspects of the threat, of how habitat loss can happen. And now the third card of the threat is going to look at solutions of that threat. So would you like to read out that card?
And discuss what is meant by reforestation and how this could be a solution for the giant pandas.
What is reforestation? Since we know that habitat loss and cutting down the forests for any number of reasons is one of the main threats to the giant pandas, then what we need to do is we need to rewild. We need to actually build bamboo forests. And that is what's happening. That is jointly with our colleagues in China, is that there is these wee isolated pockets that giant pandas live in. There needs to be bamboo corridors joining them up so that giant pandas can travel between each of those. Well, I think we've covered most of the squares. You can get the idea of how you play the game. Now I would like to ask you whether there's any other questions that you feel I haven't covered.
I was going to ask, does it come with a PowerPoint for getting across the language, or do you have any other resources? I know you mentioned a glossary.
So with the game, you get all these materials, but you also get a USB stick, which has a number of PDFs. One will be a hard copy of explaining how to play the game, like we've done tonight. And the other thing will be a glossary of terms. So there will be an explanation of any of the Mandarin words that we would use within it. And there is, of course, the 4 threats that we have looked at tonight. So climate change,
气候变化
and habitat loss,
生境丧失
overhunting,
滥捕
and pollution.
污染
What we do have alongside this, there is some sound files that teachers from the Confucius Institute have created, so that there would be a Chinese person speaking some of the words within the glossary as well.
Thank you.
Another question is, we have gone through like 3 threads, right? So I'm thinking about what will happen like next time we go.
To land on a threat that you've already covered that. It's a really good question. So if, for example, in our game, we had covered all 3 giant panda threats, and if somebody else was approaching the giant panda pathway and going to land on a threat card, it does actually say in writing down at the bottom, if all the threats of this animal have been taken, just pass on. The square becomes as if nothing happens. And in fact, if you've then done all 3 threats of all 4 animals, that would mean that we would have no red conservation counters left, and somebody would have won the game. So the game is finished when we've covered all threats. To bring a bit more fun into the lesson and to explain the language concepts and the items before you play the game, then I would introduce a session that would introduce the whole animals and facts about the animals to the students. So we would probably have a carousel of 4 different stations, a tiger station, a giant panda station, a barral station, and a stellar sea eagle station. The threats we would introduce, these two things are showing the threats. This is the one thing which is a traditional Chinese medicine that you wouldn't be able to buy. In fact, I'd be very worried if you could buy it because it is illegal. And it's illegal in China as well. China are trying their best to stop making medicines that are with endangered species. But yes, we can have the children discussing what these items are, what the relationship is, and why this means overhunting, killing the tigers. And this bit, as I say, would be a bit that would be the fun about the what do you think the Amur tiger eats? Have a look at the teeth. What are the teeth doing? They're very sharp teeth that are sliding past each other. So that means that the tiger eats meat. And in the form of meat that they would eat would probably be a deer. So he might join the Amur tiger table. And you can maybe get the students to try and work out, well, why are these pieces? What's the story that makes them all about the Amur tiger? And then they might do a wee presentation that actually says, this is an Amur tiger skull. The Amur tiger has the teeth to eat meat. But they would normally find this in the form of a deer. Unfortunately, people are killing the Amur tiger for their bones, which go in to make traditional Chinese medicines. And another reason that tigers were being hunted is because of their skins. That then forms a nice wee session that they would then play the game, and they would have a bit more understanding of what's happening within the game. So exactly like I've explained in more detail for the Amur tiger, we have a giant panda set, we could build up a Steller sea eagle set, and we could build up a Boral set. The other way of doing this, and what is available on your USB stick, is the method by cards. So you could actually see what the teeth are like in each of these pictures. And then you would be matching up the teeth cards. So we'll do a bit of that. Like where would you put these cards? Who has these types of teeth?
This one.
Yeah. See this skull here.
This one and this one.
And that was just smaller. And that would be for the Amur tiger that we looked at previously. These cards, they'll be provided any matching cards, again at two different levels. At the levels where you've got the English and the Mandarin, and you have them with just Mandarin, no English. If you didn't have these physical materials, you could do it with cards that are for the 4 different threats. Thank you very much.